In this video I will show you that the BMW M4 depreciates at a rate of $10,426 per year and whether or not the market already bottomed. What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. Now the BMW M4 seems to be a very popular car as this video was requested by many of you. And among those were M3 Bimmer, Von Gray and Flat 6 Rules. And that of course also means that you can request an analysis simply by commenting the name of the car for which you would like to see the analysis down below in the comment section. Also make sure that you subscribe and smash that notification bell so you get actually notified when your requested analysis goes live. We will have a look now to the BMW M4 market, but let me first explain how we are going to do this. In the first step we will namely explore the market a little bit and see how the market of the normal BMW M4, the M4 CS, the M4 Competition and the M4 GTS differ. In the second step we will have a look into the depreciation numbers for the normal M4, and this includes the depreciation per year and the depreciation per 1000 miles driven. After this we will compare those depreciation curves then to a direct competitor of the BMW M4, the C63 AMG. In the fourth step I will show you then what all of these numbers means for your car or the car you're planning to buy. And in the fifth step I'll show you what a fair purchasing price is. Let's start now with the first step, and that means that we will have a look to the full BMW M4 market. That market is appearing now on your screen and you can see it with the model year on the horizontal axis and the price on the vertical axis. Also note that the different types are indicated with different colors and those you can see on the right hand side. If we start then with the base version of the M4, then we can see that this car is by far the most popular one, as there are 2,202 cars for sale in today's market. And most of these cars are priced around $53,000. Now if you want a competition, then you need to have a look to the red dots, and then you can see that compared to the base model, you need to put up an additional $32,000. And as you can see from the graph, the premium which you need to pay for a CS over the base version is even higher than the premium which you pay for a competition, as the premium for a CS is around $53,000. But then of course we also have some special cases over here, the GTS. And remember that this is a hardcore, stripped down version of the M4 for which the production was limited to around 700 units. And three things surprised me when I had a look to this GTS market. First of all, there's an insane price difference visible. The two cars over here are namely priced way over the market average. And at the same time, I don't really see a valid reason as to why they should be priced so high. Yes, they both have a low mileage of 5 and 350 miles, but so does this car over here with 66 miles. But that car is priced at $97,000. Now second, the price has actually decreased quite a lot. If I'm informed correctly, the MSRP for a GTS was around $137,000 back in 2016. At this point in time, however, you're most likely to end up paying around $87,000, and that is a huge drop for a car which is produced in limited numbers. And then third, this drop is actually so large that they are even cheaper than a CS and that they are priced fairly similar to the newer competitions and the base models. While arguably the GTS is a lot more special. Now before we continue to the depreciation numbers, I still want to point out that it is a bit strange that there are so few 2019 cars for sale. I didn't really find a good explanation for this, so if you know it, please let me know down in the comment section. Before we continue however, please remember to smash that like button as it really helps to support the channel. Now then, time for the depreciation numbers. You could see however in the previous graph where I showed you the full market that it was only the base version for which we had enough model years available for sale to say something about the actual depreciation. That is then also the reason why I will show you the depreciation numbers only for the base model. And that is appearing right over here. You can see that we have again model year on the horizontal axis and the prices on the vertical axis. Each car is again also represented by a bubble, but as I mentioned we have only the base M4s included now. You can also see then that there's a blue solid line going through the graph, and this line represents the depreciation curve. Now before we move on to the actual depreciation numbers, you also need to know that I cleaned up this graph slightly. And that means that for model year 2020 I only included the new cars, and that for the other model years I only included used cars. This will namely give us a nice, clean depreciation curve. Now on average, you can see that the depreciation per year on an M4 is around $10,500 per year. But as I already mentioned, this is an average number, and it is key to interpret it as such. The number is namely a lot higher in the first year of ownership and a lot lower in the fifth year of ownership. In the first year, the number is namely $22,500, or 25% of the average new value of an M4. If we however follow this depreciation curve, then we can see that the number decreases rapidly and that for a 2016 car it decreased till around $5,300 per year. And that is of course still a high number, but a lot better than $22,500. Now, to get a better feeling for these numbers and to figure out if they are actually high or low, I compared them to the ones for the C63 AMG. After all, that is one of the main competitors for the M4. It is then also that comparison which is now appearing on your screen, and you can see it with the C63 displayed in blue and the M4 in orange. And remember that for both cars we're only looking to the base models. So for the M4, the competition, the CS and the GTS are excluded, and for the C63 the S version is excluded. If we look then to the depreciation curves, then we can see that they are very similar, and in fact also the depreciation rates are almost identical. The C63 namely depreciates on average at a rate of $9,800 per year, and remember that this was $10,500 per year for the M4. And the small difference between the two model types is probably caused by the difference in the starting point. You can namely see that there are some M4s over here which are priced way above the market, pushing the average price point up. So at this point we know how much the M4 loses per year, and that this number is quite normal. If you want to, however, figure out exactly how much you can expect to lose on the car, then you of course also need to take the mileage into account. We will therefore have a look now to the depreciation per 1000 miles driven before we have a look to the forecasted values and the fair purchasing prices. It is then also the depreciation per 1000 miles which is appearing right over here, where you can see that we have now the mileage on the horizontal axis and the price is still on the vertical axis. You can see, however, that I split the graph between the used and the new cars. It is namely even more so than with the model year that the mileage is a key factor for the value threshold between the new and the used cars. We namely all know that as soon as you drive your brand new car out of the dealer, you lost a ton of money. Now if we looked into the graph, then we can see first of all that there are a lot of new cars for sale, but that there are also some M4s which have around 80,000 miles. We can also see that on average, so for the full market, the M4 loses around $925 per 1000 miles driven. You can see, however, that it makes a large difference if you buy a new car or even one with less than 5,000 miles. For those you can namely see a large drop in price, whereas the depreciation for the cars with a higher mileage is relatively stable. Those cars do then also have a lower depreciation rate with an average rate of $415 per 1000 miles driven. Now then, we covered all of those numbers. We saw the depreciation per year and the depreciation per 1000 miles driven, but what do they actually mean if you're planning to purchase an M4 or if you actually own already one? How much can you expect to lose? Well, if you own a model year for which we already know the depreciation curve, or you're planning to buy a car for which we already know the depreciation curve, then it's easy. You can namely use exactly this curve, but let me show you an example. Let's say you're planning to purchase a 2018 car which is priced right at the average price point of $65,000. Now if you want to know how much this car will be worth 1 year from now, you simply follow the depreciation curve till 2017, where you see that the value decreased to roughly $57,000. This is then also the value drop which you can expect if you add a mileage to the car which is similar to the mileage which is added normally to a 2-year-old M4. It is of course then also so that the more mileage you add compared to the average mileage added, the lower the expected price. Vice versa, that of course also means that if you add less miles than the average, you can expect to get a higher value 1 year from now. Now, if you're looking this video and you're planning to purchase a 2015 car, or you own a 2015 car, then you might say, wait a moment, but exactly for that model year we don't know the depreciation curve yet. And that is of course true. So that's why I use the forecast model to get the forecasted prices for a BMW M4 with model year 2015. And if I put those on the screen, then you can see that we have in blue still the normal depreciation curve, then in orange we have now the forecasted values. And what I think is quite interesting over here is that you can see that the model is forecasting a slight split in the market. Each of the forecasted points is namely based on the car with a different mileage. And you can see that the value for the low mileage cars remains quite stable. The cars with a higher mileage, however, continue to drop slightly more, and this is driving a little gap in the market. And with that being said, it's time to move on to the fair purchasing prices. After all, if all of these depreciation numbers convince you to buy an M4, what would be then a fair purchasing price? Well, to figure that out, we of course need to use the two most important aspects for the value of an M4, the mileage and the model year. And because we're interested in the price, we also need to have a look to the price. It is then also those three inputs which are used to determine whether or not a car has a fair purchasing price. And the result of that you can see in the 3D plot appearing right over here, where you can see that we have now indeed the model year, the price and the mileage. Each car is again represented by a bubble, and the bubbles have different colors. And the darker the color of the bubble, the more likely it is that that specific car is priced fairly. But let me put all of that on the big screen so you can see a little bit better what's going on. You can see now namely that the cars around $50,000 have the darkest color. It are then also these cars which are most likely to have a fair purchasing price. But you can see that the cars need to have a mileage of less than 35,000 miles. You can see, however, that there are quite many different shades of green, indicating that the market for the M4 is quite stable and that, depending on your budget, there are different fair purchasing prices to take into account. Personally, I would then also look slightly below $50,000 because that is exactly where the depreciation curve starts to bottom. And as you can see from the graph, you can find many cars which are priced between $40,000 and $45,000, but still have a mileage of less than 35,000 miles. Now if we turn this around, then we can also see that there are some cars which didn't receive a color at all. And that simply means that they are priced out of the market, and there may be very good reasons for that. You can see, for example, that these high mileage 2015 cars are priced way out of the market. These cars namely have the same price as the cars with a mileage of 30,000 miles or even lower. It therefore simply doesn't make sense to go for any of those high mileage examples, and therefore they didn't receive a color. And with that in mind, let's wrap up this video and conclude. And I think it's safe to conclude that the M4 market is a market like any other car market. The premium for the new low mileage cars is high, and so is the depreciation rate. The depreciation curve belonging to the M4 market is then also very typical for the segment and shows a very steep drop in the first years and then a bottoming pattern after around 4 years. And based on that, I do think then also that those cars form the sweet spot of the market. Now when it comes to the other models than the base version of the M4, it becomes slightly more difficult to predict what will happen to them. For the competition and the CS, I do however expect very similar relative depreciation rates as the one which we see in the base market. Now when we look to the GTS, then it becomes even more difficult. Prices namely came down already a lot, but many of the cars are treated as collector's items. It is even so that I could find only 3 GTSs for sale which have a mileage of above 10,000 miles, and they are priced on average at a discount of $10,000 to $15,000 to the market. In general, however, I think that the GTS market is quite stable at this point, but it requires that you don't use the car what it's made for: driving. It is namely so that the few data points which are available indicate that as soon as you start to use your GTS, you will lose a ton of money. And with that we arrived at the end of the video. Now if you enjoyed it, please remember to smash that like button and to subscribe for more videos to come. I namely upload a fresh depreciation analysis every Saturday. As always, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week.